First off, the Draco are 3D physical beings, just like human beings on Earth. There's a lot of bullshit out there that says that they're some sort of demons or that they are in another dimension and are contacting you by spooky action at a distance or some other bullshit. No, they're 3D physical beings. They are telepathic, so they can contact you telepathically. But that's not the same thing as hopping into your head and becoming you.
So they're not possessing anybody.
They're not possessing anybody.
Uh-huh.
I've had them sit in the corner of my head and talk to me telepathically for hours on end.
Uh-huh.
Well, I do things, put it around the house, or I'm online or something. But that's not possessing me at all. I have known of people who had one. Well, how was it that Kevin Estrella put it? That he felt the Draco rise up in him.
Uh-huh.
But he'd had a past life as a Draco, and he feels that was his past life self rising up, that it wasn't a possession. They're not demons that possess you. They're physical beings with telepathic abilities. It would be just like if I decided to talk to you telepathically. Yes, I have that capability. No, I don't use it very often because humans, whenever you speak to them telepathically, they do these astral hooks so that they can talk to you again. And those astral hooks are painful. And then they wrap you up with cords. They can't go anywhere. And it's like, what the fuck? I just wanted to talk. So I don't do that anymore. I don't read people anymore because of that. It's like, no, don't touch, I will talk to you verbally. There have been a couple of people I've talked to telepathically in person. And they were shocked at first. One person said, I never felt you come in. I never felt you leave, but I heard every word clearly. And then you were gone. Well, yeah, I don't stay there forever. I'm just conversation. The whole point is just to talk. And no, they don't necessarily get into everything in your head. Now, with Draco, the normal means of communication is full intimacy telepathy. That's everything in both heads exchanged. It's part of their honor system. If you are sharing everything in your head, then you are proving that you're not being treacherous. The trouble is, humans are not hardwired for that. And it feels like your soul is being sucked out of your eyeballs. And that's why humans are scared of Draco.
If
Period.
someone is having experiences at night, when they see them, they see themselves either being with them or being scared by them. What does that mean? Are they necessarily in a program, or they've been kidnapped, abducted by them, or physically kidnapped or abducted? how does that work? And what do you know about this?
When I was a child, I would be abducted by American soldiers in reptilian costumes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's
When,
that's that's one possibility, right?
yes, that's one possibility. When you're scared, they look pretty realistic. When you stop being scared, you see the zippers, you see how phony they are, and you start laughing at them. Or in my case, I started unzipping their costumes. But those are humans pretending to be something else. And there are some humans who have been DNA altered and are up to 9 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
So just because they're 9 feet tall doesn't mean they're ET. Number one. Number two, there are lots and lots and lots of different kinds of reptilians. Not all of them are Draco. Not even 1 in 10 are Draco.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Draco are getting a bad rap for what everybody else is doing. There is a inner Earth reptilian that's related to the Mars Raptors. And I just call them both green raptors. They have the long snout. They have a little bit longer arms than the ones in Jurassic Park,
Mm-hmm.
and have 6-inch claws. That's on the end of their 3 fingers. So they have their 3 fingers that are about the size of mine, and then they have these claws that are razor blade sharp and can gut you in a single swipe. In an unarmed battle, they're going to win. You can count on it. So those guys are who is eating us.
Okay. Really?
Uh-huh. The raptors are who is eating the humans. The Underground Raptors. And they are the same race as the ones on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
They were separated in the last war that involved Mars. The event that took Mars's atmosphere separated the 2 sets of them. So they've evolved a little bit differently. I hear a lot of people claiming that Draco eat Loosh. Loosh being the collection of negative emotions. I have never seen a Draco do this. Never, ever. I have seen plasmoid beings do this.
Mm-hmm.
Plasmoid beings are made up of smoke, ethers,
Mm-hmm.
gases. They are a different class of life form. And there's a lot of them on Earth. Several billion the last time we counted. These are the ones that Islam calls jinn.
Right.
The Gnostics call them archons.
Uh-huh.
The Jews called them Velon, I believe. And they are shapeshifters. And they can take any form they want. They just can't hold it very long because it requires them concentrating their essence into a physical form. So they can't hold it very long because the energy it requires. But they do feed on energies rather than physicals.
Uh-huh.
So what I believe is happening, based on what I know from Exopolitics 101, is that these plasmoid beings are taking the form of reptilians to put the blame on somebody else.
Uh-huh.
And humans being humans, everybody's a Draco.
Right. Okay. And the shape-shifting thing has been attributed to the reptilians for a long time, since probably before David Icke, but he has been the biggest promoter of that. So, what do you know about that? He has
I know
he has the witnesses. People seeing, major political figures turning into lizards and stuff like that.
that some Draco have a personal name, hologram
Mm-hmm.
technology, that they'll have a device that resembles a wristwatch,
Mm-hmm.
and that it helps maintain the appearance of whatever that they want to look like that particular time. But nobody is physically shape-shifting other than the plasmoids.
Okay.
It's if you're a physical being, you have bones, you have a muscle structure, you have a physical self. Nobody shapeshifts. It's
Mm-hmm.
too painful. Why would they? I mean, it's so much easier to just have a hologram. And yeah, sometimes the hologram will flake out on them. And I don't doubt that some of our leaders are actually ETs under holograms.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that they're shape-shifting.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a lot of people that I've often wondered just where they came from, because they don't act like they belong here.
Right. Since we're talking about this, what do you know about the relationship between the British royal family and the Draco? Do they have an alliance? Are they related deeper on a deeper level genetically? Do they worship them? Are they like part of this? Have they been a part of this, Baphomet cult, the royals? Because
The royals were
everyone's pointing at them as being the main, sort of, at least they're stooges for for the Draco here.
okay. What I know from research
Mm-hmm.
is that the Queen, or actually the Crown Corporation,
Mm-hmm.
owns almost half the planet outright. And every Commonwealth country, the Queen actually owns everything, and people have possession at her pleasure. That's the best way to put it. I know that the current royals are actually Germans,
Mm-hmm.
and that they were not exactly a royal house until they were asked to come to Britain, that they have married into the descendants of the prior royal houses, and that all of the kings of England are officially descended from Woden. Woden is Odin, is Anki, is is a Sumerian god.
Okay.
So I'm descended from a couple of these guys myself.
So
And
we're
so,
talking about Jahami, right? Here.
yes,
Odin.
we're talking about Shahami. We're talking every single crowned king in all 6 family trees go back to Woden, who is Jahami. So we're talking Jahami hybrids. We're not talking We're not talking Draco at all.
Okay.
And that's why I have wondered where David Icke got his information about them being reptilians, because they should be Shahami. And Shahami are not reptilians. Shahami are 7 to 9 feet tall, and they look like albino Vikings. It's what they look like. And they have curly hair, curly beards, bulk. You know, when you look at the men, it's the males, it's like testosterone city. These guys are pumped up. And you have no doubt whatsoever which gender they are, because they are male. And I've only seen a couple of the females, and they are tall and thin and gorgeous until they get old, and then they get fat. And they glow.
Okay.
They glow. It's their cells give off photons, so they glow. And their descendants on Earth, if they have a high enough percentage Jahami, they do the same thing. And there are a few of them still around. So I have this theory that the Jahami never stopped interbreeding with us. And that's why we have such a high death in childbirth rate, is because we've been constantly interbred with ETs. Because if we had been left alone in the wild, all the genes for dying in childbirth would have been gone within 5 generations. Yep. And the fact we've been here for millennia, at least. You know, this race has been here at least half a million years. Some say closer to 2 million. And we're still having women die in childbirth. That tells me we're still being interfered with on a regular basis, because it's everywhere. Before modern medicine, we had, 25% of the females would die in their first childbirth. That was the leading cause of death for females, was childbirth. So most of us never got old enough to worry about all the other stuff. So that has told me personally, we've been messed with by somebody all along. So as far as the royal houses of Europe, all of them trace back to Shahami.
Okay.
None of them trace back to Draco. Although most of them do follow Baphomet.
Okay. Why don't they? So you said before that Jahami is a subject race to the Draco. So in a way, they are subjects. Automatically, they become subjects to the Draco. That's why they sort of follow that. But
well, Earth is in the middle of. Let me draw it.
Okay.
Okay. This is the center of the galaxy. And we've got several arms coming out. And this one is the Sagittarius arm.
But we are in the Orion arm, right? We are not in the Sagittarius.
No. We're in the Orion. This is the Orion branch. And this is a Sagittarius. And it's wide.
Okay.
And it's shaped like that because billions of years ago, the Sagittarius galaxy collided with the Milky Way.
Mm-hmm.
And where we are here was part of the other galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where the solar system is.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind.
So that is the Orion branch in the Sagittarius arm, right? And there is another
Yes,
arm that is called the Orion arm. Is that correct?
this is the Orion arm and this is the Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they're together.
Mm-hmm.
And the Draco Empire is there.
Okay.
So we are in Draco because we were born in Draco. Just like I was born in California and you were born in Russia, Russian Federation. Now, you had the option of the country changed while you were alive. It changed from the Soviet Union to the Russian Federation. That's what we call you in English.
Mm-hmm. Right.
My country, California, was the United States before I was born. So I'm like the people on Earth. My country has always been what it is now in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
It has always been what it is now in my parents' lifetime. And I think it was my grandparents where it changed. So, but this is the situation we have, is we're not quite in the exact center, but we're pretty damn close. So if we rebel, they're going to put us down big time. If we were on the edge, like here or here,
Uh-huh.
they might let us go, but we're not. So we are part of the Draco Empire. Now, the Draco Empire is, in a lot of ways, it's like the mafia
Mm-hmm.
and a protection racket. So they're sitting on Draconis Prime, which is one of the stars in what looks like the mouth of the snake in the constellation. And they're saying, okay, you pay us a percentage of your gross planetary product, whatever it happens to be, and we'll protect you from outside invasions, which can be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because there's lots of guys out there that are far worse than the Draco. And so most planets in the system have decided that this is a good idea. And so, or their ancestors did. And they're going along with this idea, and it's okay, because the only time that you really have problems is if you've got a local planet disaster and you can't come up with the taxes. And the queens have figured out a long time ago that shit really does happen, and they tend to work with you on it because they don't want a rebellion. But the local people are all scared because the queens have done a good job of intimidating everybody. And they do have one of the best militaries in the galaxy. So, but this particular area here is where all these star clusters are. And if you notice, it's right on the whole, it leads from the rim
Uh-huh.
all the way to the core. So it's a major highway.
Highway. Yeah.
It's a highway to get to the core. So they take their cut off of the visitors. So you go in, you have to declare what you're carrying and all this other stuff.
Like a tourist tax.
Yeah, like a toll road.
Yeah, like a toll road, yeah.
And so, yeah, there's a tourist tax and a toll road and hotel taxes, and yeah, you end up paying for going through their property, and they're basically thinking in terms of income, money,
Mhm.
and the power that that brings with it. And they've been in business for 1 billion years. This is not a new thing. What's new is humans are waking up and becoming aware of them
Right.
and going, I didn't agree to this. My
Yep.
parents didn't agree to this. It's not fair that we have to do this. Well, you've been paying all these years and just didn't know it. So, and it's not an annual thing on our time frame. It's an annual thing on their time frame.
Mm.
So their years longer than ours. They live longer too. The average alpha drac lives a 500,000,000 years. So you're talking beings that are 500 million years old.
And
And you think about all the stuff that you have learned in your lifetime, and think about having 500,000,000 years to learn. And you're going to think you're going to rebel against them, that they haven't figured you out. They watched humanity crawl out of the jungle. And they didn't kill us. Okay? Now, in the German fleet, benevolent, or the German equivalent, means they don't eat us. So all these people that are talking about, well, we're benevolent, all that means is they don't eat you. It doesn't mean they have your best interest at heart. One of the things that I learned in Shula, Exopolitics 101, the ones that look like us are the most dangerous to us. The reptilians, you can count on 90% of reptilians are carnivores.
uh-huh.
They're out of those carnivores, there are maybe 12 races that eat humans. And most of them are civilized enough they won't eat them in front of you. Yes, Draco are carnivores. Yes, they eat meat. Yes, they had a war with the Lyrans a long, long time ago, and it's still ongoing. And they started eating Lyrans, and they haven't really bothered Earth humans, especially after they found out that the German military in space, Nachtwaffen, was such a formidable ally. They decided we were worth more than to eat us. So it's actually been good for Earth-human Draco relationships for this to have happened. Now, I know I talk about when taking the armada out of hyperspace in a planet's orbit,
Uh-huh.
that the planet will surrender to the Draco. That's because we are so nasty once we get started. We have no mercy on them. The Draco will have mercy on them because they don't really want to destroy them. They just want their taxes.
So they don't want to ruin their business.
It's not good for business. Exactly. Now, if they're going to stay in rebellion, we're the enforcers. But they don't see us until the Draco have already gone through everything that they have, trying to convince them otherwise.
Okay, we have a witness testimony from Jason Rice, who said that when the Germans made the deal with the Draco in Antarctica, there was I think they handed them something like 250 or something people that were instantly terrorized by some either psychotronic or psionic imagery, and they were rounded up and put on the ships and taken away. What can you comment
Those
about that?
people were dead in the first half hour.
What?
Those people were dead in the first half hour just from being in the presence of the Draco.
Okay.
Because no matter what the Draco did to them, being in the presence of a Draco is deadly to a normal within a half hour. You're just not hardwired to be in their presence.
Right, but those were probably the soldier class, the Draco. As far as I can tell from the drawing that Gaia did, those were like Jurakan race.
Okay.
And Jurakan, according to you, is not as dangerous as the alphas, right?
They're not as dangerous as the alphas, but we're talking the Jurakan. Okay. On a military scale, the Guardians are tougher. The Alpha Draconians are tougher because their females fight. And they have, females don't know when to stop. You know this. You're married. Yes? Okay. Any army that is based on the females is going to be tougher than an army that's based on just the males. This was why the Scythians were so feared, was because their women were leading. Okay. Same thing with the Alpha Dracs, is their women lead the military, and they are more fierce and more deadly than the males are. That is why they are a matriarchy, is because their females are tougher. Human females can be tougher when they're raised to believe they can be. Most human societies on Earth deliberately soften their females because males instinctively know that they have to. Okay, this isn't picking on women. This isn't picking on men. This is the nature of the beast. Any mammal on Earth, the female is the most dangerous. Anything from ferrets through
to lions,
through polar bears. A female, especially if she has children, is the most dangerous of the race. Period. It's the way we are. So humans spend their first 16 years trying to turn their females into these soft little things that can't fight. And then they wonder why it doesn't work. Because they're fighting nature. We were meant to be like this. So
the terrorizing incident there, what do you think that was about?
The what incident?
The terrorizing of the German the people that were handed over as, I don't know, slaves, whatever.
They were probably food.
What?
They were probably food.
Okay.
Because that was the beginning of the relationship, and the Germans had not proven their worth yet.
I see. So they do eat us.
They can eat us. They used to eat us a lot. This was 80 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And we have had 80 years. 80 years to prove our worth to them. So they're not eating us like they used to.
When we hear about people being sold away as food into space, what races do you know of that buy those?
There's 12 races that are reptilian,
Uh-huh.
and there's 3 races that are humanoid.
Okay. Any races that
Uh,
we know here on Earth that we can identify, or they're just vague to
they're,
us?
they're just vague to us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, most of the, okay, you have to understand the cyborg trade to
Uh-huh.
understand humans being sold as food. Whenever they abduct humans from Earth to create cyborgs from them, all they use is a piece of brain about this big that contains your
Uh-huh.
pineal.
Okay.
And the rest, they make into freeze-dried food to sell. The whole rest of the body. Because they don't waste anything.
Uh-huh.
And they have a market for that.
Who does? You mean the Draco, or everybody who's selling cyborgs? The ice.
Everybody who's selling cyborgs. That would be planetary corporations, what Corey Good calls ICC.
Mm-hmm.
The Germans do. Um, Solar Warden is doing it. They're just pretending that they're not. Both of the mercenary companies are doing this.
The Kruger and Monarch. Okay.
Both Kruger and Monarch. So that's basically what's financing the secret space programs is cyborgs.
So not the
For
beer,
all,
not the chocolates, not the children's clothes, or what
no,
they call the military hardware that we sell. The number one is the military hardware, number two is beer, number three is the children's clothes.
um, cyborgs are classified as military hardware.
Okay, that's right.
That is the number one thing that they sell is cyborgs. Following cyborgs is engineering,
Uh-huh.
like ships,
Uh-huh.
like repairing ships, um,
Maintenance, spare
maintenance.
parts.
We're in a, we're near a major portal that they have to go through to go to another part of space. And a lot of time we've gotten a reputation for good engineering.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of folks will come out of the portal, they'll have something wrong with it, with their ship, and they'll stop by one of the stations to have it fixed. We've gotten a good reputation for that. We've gotten a reputation. Oh my. There's a joke article out there. Oh, it's set up where it's someone talking to Klingons,
Uh-huh.
Star Trek,
Right.
about about why did why why did the Vulcans give stuff to the humans? And it's a Klingon asking because we were so weird. And the Vulcan is telling these Klingons all about all the stuff that they'd given us and what we did with it. And that they gave us 3 warp drives and we figured out how to put them in series and go even faster. The thing that we're creative, or actually, that's actually true. We think outside the box because they have been using, each race has its own technology that they've been using literally millions of years with no changes. It works, why change it? And we'll get bits and pieces of it in trade. And what we've been doing with these bits and pieces from different cultures is mixing them in ways that they didn't even think were possible and coming up with a totally different technology. And they're like, how the hell did they come up with that? You know, and it's, you know how in the American South, they've got this phrase, it's called hold my beer. And it's, you're about to do something really stupid. Hold my beer. I got this. And they go and they do this thing. And it usually works. And that's what the rest of the galaxy is looking at and going, what the hell? You know? And so they are giving us things that they don't think we can use in exchange for cyborgs that they can use.
Uh-huh.
And they found some of the ancient technology in the solar system, and they've been basically, you know how that they bought Manhattan Island for $28 worth of glass beads. They've been basically doing that to us for the last 70 years.
You mean the Draco?
And everybody.
Okay. All the ETs.
There are reasons I do not trust any ET race. I will say none of them are demons, but none of them are angels either. They're used car salesmen. They want what they want at the cheapest price. And they're a little bit afraid of us because we've taken these glass beads and turned them into some pretty impressive technologies. But keep in mind, the Germans were the best engineers on the planet, and they're in space.
Yeah.
They're the ones working with a lot of this technology. And these groups don't share tech. So if Planetary Corporations has it, aka bankers in space, you can count on the Germans don't,
Uh-huh.
and vice versa, because those two groups are at each other's throats. And Solar Warden is on the tail of Planetary Corporations attacking the Germans. And so you've got you've got the bankers in space and their sidekicks. And then you've got these two mercenary companies. And the Germans usually work with Kruger because they're less expensive. But if they have to, they'll use Monarch. The main difference between the two, regardless of what they tell you, is that Monarch shoots up their people with black goo. Kruger doesn't. But Kruger enhances everybody, so nobody's really human anymore, which is basically the same thing as shooting them up. So it comes to the same thing. You're not really who you were when you started.
Yep.
And both of them use clone bodies while you're gone.
Okay.
And that's why they do the 20 and back, is because the original mind of the clone body will push them out at about 20 years.
Oh, okay.
So, where the Germans use your natural body and age regress you back to when they took you. So you're used over and over and over for however long your genetics can handle. But, okay. The Draco did not give the Germans the regen tanks. The Mantids did. And I can't remember which side of that red circle that the Mantids are on, but they had their own empire. But they saw the Germans in the Hannibal ships dying from radiation sickness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were being built about the same time that Marie Curie was working with radium. So they didn't know about radiation sickness.
Oh, okay.
All they knew for sure was that when they tested the Galactic engines, that everything within a certain perimeter died immediately. So they put enough shielding that you could be around it, not realizing that you would still die eventually.
Mm-hmm.
It just took longer. And the mantids said, boy, howdy, these guys are really motivated to get out in space, aren't they? So they said, all right, if they're going to do this anyway, let's give them something where that they can be healthy while they're doing it. So they gave them the regen tanks, or leased them. So I'm going to assume that the Germans are paying for them with something. And since what we have is engineering and cyborgs, it's going to be one or the other.
So the Draco,
So,
though, I heard Randy Kramer on multiple occasions saying that they were kicking, including on Gaia, they were kicking the Draco's asses on Mars. And that was part of their alliance with the native reptoids, raptors, and the insectoids, and all of them were teaming up together to basically fend off this Draco invasion in that region where he was. What do you think was happening there? And he said that their military hardware was actually very good against the Draco. Okay, yeah.
Number one, when I got there, the planet had been split up between the Draco, the Mars Raptors,
Mm-hmm.
the insectoids, and there was an underground city that belonged to the tall whites.
Mm-hmm.
So the surface level had been split up between these three races. Now, the Germans had the alliance with the Draco and came in, and the places that the Draco wanted them to live were not suitable. So they started a war with the other two races. And because the tall whites were underground, they didn't bother them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that my commander answered to a tall white. And I know
You mean to a Draco?
a Draco,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
My commanding officer, well, he was tall and he was white and he was a Draco.
Okay.
Okay, you're right. I had this mental picture of this guy and all of the wrong word came out of my mouth. But yeah, okay. I know that Randy's Battle of the Blender had been ordered by my commander. And I know that the Draco punished him for it, told him he had no honor and gutted him. And we waited for the Draco to leave and we put the commander in the regen tank.
What was the reason for sending them over there, and why were the Draco mad? Because as far as okay, Randy, what Randy is saying is that there was a peace treaty, which is what you're saying in
Yep.
1990, and then there was a lot of backstabbing and treaty violation afterwards, which was he said it was a complete mess. He doesn't even want to talk about it because every time there was another conference with them when we were assuring them that we would keep the treaty. I mean, his group would keep the treaty. There was another violation on the humans' part, and the Raptors would, we would start over. He said so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
But it was not the Draco's doing.
Okay.
It was the German militias doing.
Okay.
And I don't know what his reasoning was,
Mm-hmm.
but the command on Mars, the Germans were
Mm-hmm.
doing this. And there was something they wanted. And they kept going after it. And the insectoids and the raptors kept saying, oh, hell no. And that was the problem, was whatever it was that the Germans wanted was holy
Mm-hmm.
to the natives, and they were not going to part with it. And the Germans wanted it so bad. And so they kept violating the treaties. The treaty would be signed. And the Draco considered this to be dishonorable.
Mm-hmm.
They were pissed as hell over it. And I know my commander was gutted for it. I've heard of other commanders involved that were gutted for it, and still they kept on. And I don't know what it was they wanted, but it was something that was worth violating a treaty. And to be honest, Randy also talks about that the American Department of Defense uses the Mars raptors and insectoids for target practice for their weapons of mass destruction that
Yes.
they want to use on Earth. So they're not exactly innocent in this. So now what do I say? Have you ever seen a treaty that the American government has kept with anybody? We haven't kept a single treaty we've ever made in our entire 250 years. And humans are not any different in space.
So that Draco group that was invading there, do you think it was separate from your command, your chain of command? I just want to establish that because you,
I had not heard of that. So
because
I don't,
you seem to be on the same page with Randy on many things, and yeah, you haven't heard of that, and he hasn't heard about many things that you lived because you were in separate places, and so he's been telling this thing about part of their kicking the Draco out of the solar system was done on Mars, and then another part was done somewhere else. And overall, we're doing well because our weapons are now not superior, but on a par with them. And so, that's where it goes from there. That they tested the
well,
weapons. There was an invading force, a draconian force. They started winning and they started gaining more confidence with that, and now because of all that, the Draco are not a problem. There aren't any empires that are heading our way and that are a threat to us, and that's what his line of thought is right now. That's what he's telling, and it's fine. I mean, maybe this is what they actually mean to tell people, right?
well, my understanding is very different from that,
Okay.
that the Draco Empire has never left the solar system,
Uh-huh.
that Saturn is a base for the Guardians,
Uh-huh.
that that
You mean the Guardian fleet from the center of the galaxy, or the Draco Guardian?
the Guardian fleet from the center of the galaxy, that's what's on Saturn, and that the Americans basically declared war on them by dropping that satellite on them, trying to turn it into a sun. And so they're currently in deep shit. That the Draco are still on Mars. They are still on the moon. They are still on Mercury. Venus has an outpost of the Shahami. And there are still Draco on Jupiter. So the Draco are still here, and they have an outpost on one of the planets in the Oort cloud. So if humans had been rebelling against the Draco, there would have been an actual war, and it would have been visible from Earth, and most of Earth would have been destroyed by now.
Okay.
So I have fought on the Draco side in too many of those wars. And I know for damn sure we wouldn't still be here. They don't even have to fire weapons at us, just drop rocks.
Is there a possibility that the Guardians are sort of creating that counterbalance for... Because we always think about us in the center, right? We are in the center of all this. So the Draco have been dominating us.
Humans are very self-centered.
Now the Guardians are coming to liberate us from that. So is this what the Guardians are here for? Or like many people would ask, and they have been asking, saying like, why doesn't anyone stronger than whatever we are being under right now come and save us or help us somehow, assist us? And now that everyone's been talking about the Guardians, they say this is what the Guardians are here for. They're here to assist us in liberating ourselves.
No, they are here because every 10 to 15,000 years, we crawl out of our playpen and create havoc for the rest of the galaxy. And they are here on Saturn, keeping an eye on us because they know it's that time again.
Okay.
And they are here keeping an eye on us, and they have already started sending the Germans back first. The first colony with approximately 1 billion people have been returning through the portal in the sun. That's what all those photos are of, is the German fleet bringing these people back.
All these craft.
All these craft are bringing people, German people, back into the solar system. There will be over 1 trillion humans of mostly German descent coming back over the next few decades. They will all be placed in the solar system. Then the other factions will all be returning to Earth or the solar system. So you will have all 6 major factions and all the little ones all back in the solar system together, with the Guardians on Saturn babysitting them. And anybody else that is here that wants to leave will be allowed to. Humans will be stuck inside the Oort cloud.
Who are the Guardians, and why don't they say, I don't know?
Who are the Guardians? The Guardians are a military police, Gestapo. Not interested in anybody's freedom. They're interested in enforcing galactic law. And there are courts associated with them if you are personally found to be in violation of galactic law and you are not Earth is considered a guardian protectorate, meaning that we are considered to be so primitive that we don't understand galactic law.
Right. But how are we protected if we are under someone else's empire's, domination.
It means that whenever that we can't pay the taxes, the Draco can't come wipe us out.
In other
That's
words,
all.
don't the Draco violate the galactic law by, making by creating subject worlds one after another and maybe even destroying some of them? Don't they violate that? If you destroy a whole planet, which they have done, and with the Germans, isn't that a violation? In our eyes, it would be a violation. No? Okay.
No, because the people of that world made a free will consent to being part of the Draco Empire. Now, what you're not understanding is Earth has been part of the Draco Empire under 5 previous races. All of those races have agreed to it. And technically, Earth is still under Jahami control. And the Jahami are a subject race. They made the agreement. And they are, until we are a galactic level 0 civilization, they are considered to be our parent.
I see. So we have no say in it in a way.
We are children in a playpen. 5-year-olds. The majority of us are not telepathic. We do not take care of the members of our race. We actually capture our weakest members and turn them into cyborgs or slaves and sell them off-world. We are considered barbaric.
But that's not what we would say is that this is the Cabal doing that, and Cabal is not fully human, but as a human race, why don't we get a chance to say, get rid of all that, being assisted in getting rid of all those perpetrators, and just be our own civilization, however low in development and naive probably, but still, I'm sure the majority of people would not approve of either what the Cabal is doing or what the rest of them are.
When people vote in any election, they are giving consent to being ruled by whoever wins.
Okay.
The people who win are representing you. And most of those people have been contacted by various races and in their own personal arrogance have agreed to things without knowing what the consequences were.
Okay.
So you have given consent. And under galactic law, if you are presented with an idea, you are, even if it's in a fictional form, like a book or a movie or an article or an online photo display or game, and you do not say, no, net, I do not consent, then you have agreed to do this. You have agreed to this.
Okay, this is a big point. Yeah.
So we have religion after religion after religion after religion on this world that all say submit to God in whatever name. They teach you to say yes. They teach you to accept. What you give attention to persists. Do not resist or it will persist. That's bullshit. Under galactic law, you say no or you've said yes. So people need to understand this. You have to say no out loud. with your voice.
Mhm.
Or if you don't have a voice, you're deaf or whatever, you sign it. You have to say no. And people, it's like beating them over the head. They don't want to accept it. But this has been the basis for a lot of human law as well. Look at the old rape laws. If a woman doesn't scream, if she doesn't say no, then she's given consent.
Mhm.
That's why so many men think that if a woman's unconscious, it's not rape, because she can't say no.
But that's not. I mean,
It's the same thing.
so what you're saying is, on some level, everyone agrees, whether they know the scale of it or not.
Yes.
Okay.
At some level, we have all agreed to this. We
Okay.
just didn't understand what we were agreeing to.
I see. Okay. Have you seen the Draco in a relaxed environment when they sort of kick back and being themselves? Are they always this, strict, powerful projection of being, or are they, just beings that, know how to relax, maybe have humor, and when they talk, communicate, do they sort of understand the whole, what I said, the whole irony of, talking to the Germans and not being able to communicate, and how does it all play out in the day-to-day thing?
In the day-to-day thing, the alphas try to be businesslike,
Hmm.
but because it's full intimacy telepathy, you hear them laughing through the whole thing because it's just hilarious. And it the things we come up with are very childlike to them.
Hmm.
And that parent laughter that you get when your child thinks they're being smart, or they've made some big discovery and you realize it's a big deal for them, and you're you're amused and happy and proud all at the same thing. There's a lot of that.
Hmm.
The Dragons, they don't have a lot of humor,
Hmm.
or at least they never did with me. Um, I have Dragon guards. Um, I don't want to talk about why I do, but I do. And they have saved my life more than once. And there are things in my personal life that they think are just absolutely hilarious. And I get to listen to them cracking up. And I told them once that they were trashing my house. So they went through and they were deliberately stomp, 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 stomp. So yeah, they have humor. The worker class ones, the ones that are green and look like dinosaurs, um, they're just basically blue collar guys, working class. They're very serious about their jobs, but once they're off duty, they're off duty. And they talk about sex and their version of beer and whatever the sports are. And they'll get into fights over sports scores.
Really?
Yeah. Like
You mean
ironwork.
you've seen that happen?
It's not like cut each other up fights, but
Hmm.
like yeah, the worker class are very much like us.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they have a sense of humor. They see the irony. They consider us to be stupid, childlike, And sometimes they're proud of us, and sometimes they're frustrated by us, and sometimes they're like, oh my God, why did I get stationed here?
Okay.
And yeah.
It's like that meme we have about the SSP. Still get stationed in the fucking desert.
Yeah,
I've joined
exactly.
the space force, but still get stationed in the desert.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, why did I have to be stationed with humans?
Okay, so they have their own version of kind of what we call humanity and just being. They also get tired and frustrated, and they also have their
Yeah,
own challenges with the jobs and the bosses and all this stuff. Okay.
the Jerkins hate the alphas
Uh-huh.
because they were they were conquered,
Uh-huh.
and that hurts their pride.
Okay.
And constantly having to answer to the alpha reminds them that they were conquered. And so it's a pride thing, ego. Um, every every being that is in a meat suit has a soul
Uh-huh.
and an ego, a self-image of who you are as a being. And all of well, I've only encountered 3 of the Draco races. There's 7 of them, and they're in a caste system, and they don't interact with each other a lot. But they have egos, and they are telepathic, and they are smarter than humans are on a basic level. And most of the time I've interacted with them, I've been shot up with black goo, so I was close to their IQ.
Uh-huh.
So they were not dealing with a basic human. And I'm DNA modified to be able to be around them. So I got to know them on a level where other humans can't. And after a while, you don't even notice the body.
Uh-huh.
You feel the energy, you know the person inside it. And that's why I have a tendency to call all of them people, is because they're a mind with emotions and humor and quirks, just like we are.
Okay. So they're not,
And
yeah, because we're thinking of them as a like almost like a two-dimensional picture of being the Draco. It's like the screen, the curtain coming down. It's like a one monolith kind of image, and they're all different. They have
yeah,
individualities and stuff.
they're individuals.
Uh,
They all have a self-interest and they have a species
interest.
interest.
Okay. And all of that
Now,
plays just like in our society.
it plays just like us, yeah.
Okay.
They have a more structured society than we do. They have a caste system.
Mhm.
You are genetically modified to a certain place, and the modifications are supposed to make it where that you're good at it. So whatever your job is in life, you're going to be good at it,
Mhm.
which gives job satisfaction, which most of us don't have.
Okay.
So their biggest problems are, my boss is an asshole. Not that I hate my job, it's I hate my boss.
Okay.
So it's more,
Because they're still dominating, right? It's a dominating kind of system. Or why are they? Why
it's
isn't there more? Why isn't what I'm saying is why isn't there more cohesion in their system, since they have a more, I guess, a more efficient, even genetically, a more efficient system of hierarchy? Or is there cohesion inside each race, but between the races there is still like frictions?
there's cohesion inside each race, and the friction between the races is because the alphas conquered them.
Okay.
And each of them would like to be their own boss. Each of them would like to be boss of the empire. But one of them can be. And the one that is conquered the rest. They went through and they went through their system, their constellation first, and then spread out from there.
Okay. And the last question, like being with them almost on equal terms, I would say. Have they ever gotten like almost forgotten about, who you were as, their subjects, and just talk to you in brief about something? Have they ever shared things that they would just, personally share, or joke, or tell jokes or anything? I guess
Oh,
what I think was happening is that they would probably laugh at the Germans behind their backs all the time because you were talking to them, and how were
they were
right?
at the Germans a lot, especially the pompous ones.
Okay.
Um, they it was an atmosphere of these people are so weak they cannot be in our presence without dying, and yet they treat us like we're second class citizens.
Uh-huh.
And they were including me with them
Okay.
because they have heard Germans tell me that how one commanding officer put it, you're a Draco. You smell like a Draco. You act like a Draco. You can live with the Draco. You're a Draco. You just look like a human. And so the Draco tended to accept me because of that, because they might be 3 rooms down, but they were listening telepathically.
Oh, okay.
They could hear it. They knew what the man was telling me. So, they knew the abuse that I took for being modified, and they accepted me more because of it. But yeah, they have that same, you're not really one of us, you're human. But when you're working with them, especially whenever you're representing your boss that can't be around them, they tend to just, well, okay, so I've heard other humans that can work with them talk about dropping to a knee around them. How may I serve? That pisses them off. It's like, what the hell are you? You're sturdy enough to be around us, and you act like a slave. And so they would start treating them like a slave, and do things intentionally to embarrass them because they want to be a slave. It's like, you chose your position, dude.
Right. So they kind of follow the nature. If your nature is to be, subservient, then you're gonna be subservient, right?
Yeah. Where I would come in and go, hi, I'm here.
Yeah.
And I don't kneel. I stand with them, and they just sort of, And then they do a quick over on me, and they go, okay. And just treat me like I'm one of the guys, which is fine with me.
What was their biggest joke about the Germans? Do you remember?
It was a visual. It was it was a visual about the higher officers in their bridge uniforms,
Uh-huh.
and so the blacks,
Uh-huh.
the black uniform,
Uh-huh.
and they would be so clean and prissy and wearing gloves and their hats, and showing them tripping over a tail because Draco have tails.
And they would trip over a tail
They would trip over a tail.
and fall.
Hmm?
Okay.
That was, to them, that was the funniest thing, that they were so, like, so prissy and head up in the air, and they'd end up tripping over somebody's tail. It's hilarious.
Yeah. How?
You know,
Yeah.
three stooges kind of humor is what
Right.
they really
Exactly.
liked.
Yeah. Very basic, right?
Very basic humor. Very basic humor. They thought that was just absolutely hilarious. And it invariably happened because, the Germans were not used to watching for tails.
I was wondering, like, did the Germans use any protection? Meaning, you said that the Draco would use avatars sometimes, but did the Germans come up with a protective, I don't know, a suit or a field or any kind of a barrier while talking? Because if your military is in cooperation, you have to have a high-ranking military officer talk to another officer without, intermediaries. How did they solve that? It should have been,
People like
or did they use like sort of like walkie-talkie or or a screen or
they
something?
used they used they used a screen type of thing,
Okay.
but most of the time they used people like me that were telepathic, and I could go
Mm,
from the Drake to the officer
okay.
and use
Ah, so you
telepathy
would be like
to,
an interpreter, like a distance kind of.
yeah.
Okay, I see.
Um, this is not stuff I haven't talked about. I talk about that I have
Yeah.
telepathy,
Oh.
and I talk about that I can be around Draco, and that I have been in briefings
Right,
with
right. Okay.
the Draco where my commander could not be because he was German and normal human. He was shot up with black goo, so he was smart, but wasn't hardwired to be around the Draco. And so the Germans kind of have this love-hate relationship with people like me because they need us,
Mm-hmm.
but they're so proud of being human that they can't allow themselves to embrace us.
Crazy.
This is a real problem for people like me, is that everywhere we go, we're considered freaks, and no one wants to embrace us as being part of them. So,
Okay, so anytime there's a conference, they basically you're either with one party or the other communicating, right? Okay.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I was with one party or the other and linked.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
Interesting.
and sharing information, which when you're talking with a Draco and getting everything in their head all at once, figuring out what is strategically important to the situation to transfer it to your commanding officer. That's the hardest part of the
Yeah,
job, is
that's an art in itself, yeah.
sorting it
Yeah.
out. And if you get it wrong, there are lives at stake. So you have to get it right.
It's actually the same with uh, like traditional interpreting because people tend to say more than that is important. So you have to sort things out,
Yeah.
and sometimes you have to, in a way, get into someone's head because not everyone is eloquent enough to communicate what they mean and what they want to say. So very often you have to, the go beyond the words and beyond what is said and actually get to the true meaning of the message, because otherwise you just translate something from the dictionary and it will be just meaningless to the other party.
Irrelevant.
They will think, it means nothing. It's like, what are you saying? So Sometimes you just have to say, okay, what does he mean? What does she mean? And put them together. Okay.
Yeah, that involves a lot of
Intuitive.
at least
Yeah.
the intuitive behavior,
Uh,
at least empathy
yep.
to understand
Right.
that what they're saying is not what they're meaning. And that the Draco practice of full intimacy telepathy bypasses that. So I can see its value.
Mm-hmm. Do they have
But
do they have names, and do their names mean anything? Like if they have like a name that has a sound, but then there is a meaning behind it, like a lot of Greek names that we have do, for example. Do they have those names?
well, my name means weaver,
Yeah.
and it also means wife.
Okay.
That's what Penelope means.
Uh-huh.
As they said at Penelope.
Penelope. Yeah. It's
Penelope.
Spanish style, yeah.
It's Akkadian Greek.
Yeah, and so do
So
the Draco have names that actually mean something, or
yeah, they have names that usually mean something, but they are so difficult for humans to pronounce that it's a lost cause.
okay.
Uh, there's a handful of words that I can pronounce, and most of them I don't even try. I know Raka means fool or slave, kind of interchangeably. Patel is founder. Those are the ones I can pronounce. They tend to more identify you with a mental image.
Mhm.
And so
So they
there are,
didn't call you by your name, for example.
they would ask for me by name.
Okay.
They would ask for Leutnant Penelope Valkyrin, and they would pronounce it correctly.
Okay.
They would ask for me by name, and that annoyed my bosses tremendously.
Why? Why is that?
Ego.
Okay.
Well, why do they want her?
Okay.
I tended to be in trouble. That's the Germans have a tendency to have a insulting pet name for a person.
Right. Yeah.
And they would use that instead of your name. And I found that incredibly demeaning. And after a while I would fight back and just, I serve in your fleet, you need me. I'm worthy of more respect than that. If nothing, the name they chose for me was Miscabert, which is an abortion that lived. And after a while, after you've saved their asses so many times, you get to where you think, it would be nice to just be Lieutenant, Lieutenant. Call me by my official title, my rank. Now, if you have to call me something other than my name, call me by my rank. Don't call me this insult. I've earned respect. And after a while, I guess the polite way of saying it is I would get pissy. Me have a temper? Oh my goodness, no. Yeah. I would do things because I was hurt, is the truth of the matter. I was hurt that they kept being so disrespectful to me. And after a while, it would wear on me, and I would lash out. And so I was usually in trouble. I have ranked as high as commander and always been bumped down to lieutenant, first lieutenant, because I would have a temper tantrum about some insult they gave me. And they would never understand why I was so angry.
From what I know about the German culture, not a lot, but I worked in a department once that was an international. It was a city hall international department, and we were a group of people who were good at different languages with different backgrounds. And so mine was Chinese, and there was a French girl that was like a French interpreter. There was an Italian, and there was a German, a person who lived in Germany for many years and worked with them. And he worked with from the eastern side, of course, on a gas pipe uh, plant or something, a project from the Soviet side. So he would always, tell these stories about how Germans were rude to a point that especially when they are relaxed, to a point that they treat even their own people as, garbage. They would they would call they would call an old woman who is like one of their own people. They would call an old woman like what, a cemetery vegetable or something like that. He said that, he said that he was once getting on a bus, and the bus driver, basically, they were these old ladies that were also getting on, and they were slow, and so he almost and once they were like almost on the bus, still being able to hear what he said, he was like saying out loud, all these cemetery vegetables, are giving me trouble or something. And so the person said he was sometimes shocked, but then he got used to it, because he was, most of the time it was humor. It was like black humor on their part. So he would tell all these stories.
That's what they consider this as like,
this was typical.
Like
It's
an affectionate name, but they didn't understand being called that all the time.
No.
Would wear on me. They had no understanding of that. So that's what I was generally in trouble for. So and I have one commanding officer who doesn't want me on his ship, and he's been doing things that are against regulations to set me up to get me off his ship. And I've talked to some of the other veterans in our group about this, and they're mortified at what this man has done. And so I've had enough bleed over with that altar that I told her to write a letter to High Command and have them put it in my file. What has done, why I have responded like this. And so far they've ignored it. But
so that was in real time. You were
that's an altar that is active in real time.
Right now.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, because every time you tell a story like that, people think it was like in the past back then. And
no, I have approximately 95 altars that are active right now in space.
Okay, that's the next subject then.
That's part of why I'm so tired all the time, is because that's too many. my soul is like split that many times, and it's too many. So
The last question about the Draco. What was the rank? Like, did the Germans have their own name system of ranks for the Draco? Like, did you know what the rank of your, the person that was there on the base all the time was? Like, do they have generals? Do they have a similar system to ours? I mean, like, I don't know, maybe royal titles, whatever.
I know he was not a top guy. He was the top guy for Mars.
Oh, okay. So he was the top person on the planet.
He was the top Draco for Mars.
Okay.
I don't know where he ranked in the Empire. So Mars was a pretty nothing place. So he must not have been real powerful in Stalag 13 in the TV show. A place they cause trouble all the time, so it's a punishment to be sent there.
Okay. It's like Siberia, basically.
Yeah.